Welcome everyone to another story of the shot. I'm really excited to share. You can't go wrong with a pika photo, but you really can't go wrong with a pika photo with some habitat. And I got this amazing shot from the amazing Jacques Fortier. How's it going, Jacques?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing this. I kind of remember talking to you a little bit when this was happening and everything, and there's some story behind this for sure.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Had you photographed these guys before at all before this?
No, this was my first time. It's
It was.
actually, yeah, my first time out in that habitat. I kind of like went out to the Sierras with the goal of getting a pika. And actually, it was really like this was actually the shot that I was hoping for. It was a scenic pika shot.
And so you just pick one of the most challenging places to get them to start out with.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never been up that high before. I think like the highest I'd been before that was something like 7,000 feet, and I was
Okay.
not doing hiking or anything. Um, but everyone told me if you're doing pikas, like there's this one lake in Yosemite that it's just like guaranteed. You go there, you get pikas. So I was
Okay.
like, all right, sounds good. Drive out to Yosemite. I thought I was being smart because I actually stopped in Yosemite Valley, which is up around 4,000 feet
Yeah.
for like a couple of days to try to get acclimated to the altitude. But then you have to go up like another 6,000 feet to get up to where they live because
Yeah.
they only live up that high where it's cold enough for them.
And
So
I just
yeah,
want to add this really fast. That's what I always thought, right? And every place I've seen them has been pretty high elevation. We were just up in British Columbia, 2,000 feet elevation, had pika. It kind of blew
2,000
my
feet.
mind. Yeah. I don't know how they were managing that low. It was really surprising.
Yeah, I've actually heard about that. Like sometimes there'll be valleys where cooler air collects, and so they can
Maybe.
like survive a little lower down.
Yeah.
Uh, have you heard of Deirdre Rosenberg?
Yes.
Yeah, so she does a lot of pica stuff,
Yes.
and anyone who gets into any animal, it seems like they always tell you like, oh, actually, all the stuff you read is like not quite true. And I think
Sure.
that she's said that she's seen them in like a bunch of different spots as well. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah. But I know it is consistently that way. So anyway, back to your story. Yeah. So you got to get up there, huh?
got to get up there, and then once you get to the trailhead, it was like it didn't seem like that bad of a hike. It was something like, a mile and a half,
Okay.
like 500 feet of elevation gain. Like, didn't seem all that bad.
That's decent
And
over a
I,
mile, though. That's pretty steep.
yeah, yeah. And I've been warned that, like, okay, you gotta take it a little easier because of the elevation. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I had no idea. I'm going, and it's basically like it's nonstop up. Like,
Yeah.
you're just walking, and it's like you're either kind of climbing stairs or you're scrambling up rocks, just like nonstop. There's actually one point where I was like, oh, nice. Like now I'm kind of walking along a flat section of the trail. Yeah, it turned out I'd gone off trail. So I'm like, just
And what
like
elevation was this? So, like, where you started at that point?
I think I started
Roughly.
somewhere between 9,500 and 10,000 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's affecting you for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I was like trying to like take it easy, but also it was taking way longer than I expected, and I had to get in time to like get a shot and
Gotcha.
then get back down because I'd never been on the trail before, so I didn't want to be descending this steep trail
Yeah.
after sunset. So I was really trying to strike this balance of not killing myself, like just totally being unprepared for the altitude, but also getting enough time.
Okay.
So, going up, 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 and finally I get to the summit and the spot where the pikas are actually just like a little ways down. So you have to kind of like climb down to a lake. And so I'm just like about to go down and I'm just thinking about how hard I had to push to get up there and how much time I had. And I was like, no, like
Yeah.
I've gotta just like chill out because otherwise I might actually be in trouble trying to get out of here.
Sure.
Like I try to push myself, but sometimes like when that voice like just kind of starts going like, this is not the best idea.
Yeah.
Like that was definitely one of those times. So I dropped a pin just to see where I was at
Yep.
and then like, turned around and head back down.
I'm going to throw a real short moment of exactly what you just described in there with pika. I don't know if you were aware. A little over 2 weeks ago, up in British Columbia there at that 2,000 foot elevation area, I decided to go out and photograph pika. I've always seen them in kind of the scree fields, the smaller kind of rocks. These guys were in like massive, massive field, like huge talus boulders and everything. Like it was really big stuff, like not that I've ever been in before. I go along this dirt road, C1, and I'm like, oh, I love being in their habitat. So I decide to go off the road and I go start climbing up into there. It's also, because it's lower elevation, it's moss covered. And so a little bit more sketchy. Usually I'm used to being in like the drier rocks, good texture, good grip, stuff like that. So it's a little bit more sketchy. I get up there, the pika's hiding, not seeing it, and I'm just like, man, it just doesn't feel right up here. Something feels off, so let me get back down. On my way back down, I have to make this one little like kind of jump over a big open area. And I make the jump fine, but didn't see a rock underneath, like hidden under something, slam my knee into it, splits it right open. I mean, just like my leg is covered in blood in a couple of minutes. So now I got to scramble back down. Thankfully, only 10 minutes from the van, get back. Long story short, 5 stitches later, about a week and a half of not even being able to really walk on it very much. And I'm just now finally getting back to being able to get out. And we did a hike the other day and I was okay, but it's still sore and everything like that. So my point is, listening to that inner voice of saying like, maybe it's just not worth it. And like in my head in that moment, Jacques, I was like, I don't feel comfortable up here. I'm going back down to the road. Like I had made that decision, but getting back down is when this happened. And I just, it was like almost 2 weeks of like out of commission, couldn't go out and do stuff. And it can happen like too easy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you push yourself to get up there, but the getting down's the hardest part.
Yeah. Yep. So that was a smart move. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I mean, when I got back, like I was starting to like get a headache by the time that I got to the hotel, and I was just like, okay, like it's clearly like the altitude's just not working for me.
Yeah.
And I was like staying down at 8,000 feet, so I figured, okay, this will probably be okay. Just take the night, see how I'm feeling next day, and then I was like, I'm just gonna get back at it.
Were you planning on going in morning or evening the next day?
I was gonna do evening again. I figured just take it easy, rest up, and then just have like full tank of gas to go do it in the evening.
Nice.
Well, I get up the next day and I was just like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. Like the altitude was like messing with me. Like I pushed myself and I just didn't want to do it again.
Yep.
So I got on iNaturalist and I was like, there's got to be more pikas around here. Like this can't be the only place with pikas. And sure enough, like there's a bunch of lakes just all over the area that have pikas, and they don't have like nearly as many sightings as like the place that everyone told me to go.
Yeah.
But I figured like they don't move around a lot, right? They live in colonies. Yeah. Like they, as long as the colony is surviving, if there's been sightings, like there's probably pikas there.
Yeah.
So I found a spot where it was up at 10,000 feet, but you park at 10,000 feet.
Much better.
So you just go in, you park, and it's like, I think it's maybe like, 100 feet of elevation gain for nice. Like, the entire walk.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just go, I drive there, I park, and there weren't nearly as many sightings. So it wasn't like I had like this one hot spot where I could just walk up and shoot a pika. But I figured like, okay, what do pika need? Like they need the rocks for shelter. They need some food and they need some water. So I figured that I could probably, figure it out.
Jacques,
so I'm just walking along the trail.
Prior to this going out, had you listened to any of their calls or anything like that, so you knew what they sounded like?
Yeah, I had.
Okay.
And actually, it's this is the funniest part. This is the part that I forgot to tell, is that while I'm driving to this other lake, I put on your podcast, just, needed something. It's about an hour drive, something to listen to.
Yeah.
And you're telling this whole story about photographing pikas. Was that in like Washington State?
It was, yeah. It was right around Mount Baker. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're telling the whole story, like, it's like, okay, this is how you approached it, and you're watching it, like, bouncing back and forth between its hay pile and where it was, like, gathering food, and like, the whole thing. So I have, like, I could have planned it better. Like, I had this entire, nice. Like, pika photography tutorial on my way out there.
That's so great.
So, yeah, I'd heard the calls, and I kind of heard that, like, typically, like, you'll hear them before you'll see them. But I kind of figured I'd just walk and find some likely pika habitat and, see what I could hear.
Yeah.
And so like I'm walking along and I'm, some people have seen me with my camera and stuff. They're like, "Hey, what are you photographing?" And it's like, "Oh, pikas," and they're like, "Oh, I've never seen one of those." So I'm kind of like wondering, oh, well, maybe maybe this is a bad idea. But I get to the spot and I just stand still, just kind of wait for 2 minutes, and then I hear a call up the slope.
Nice.
It was actually interesting. Like it was a slightly different call than I'm used to because I'd always heard like this like single like kind of bleat.
Yeah.
And this was more like kind of like a double note, but it was
Interesting.
I could tell that it was a pika.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that was like I haven't heard any other recordings. Like I went and looked and I haven't heard another recording like that. But
I'm trying to think.
anyway,
I don't think I've ever heard the double
like
either. Yeah.
yeah. It was all they were doing. I never heard the single call like,
Really?
the entire time I was there. Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know. Maybe it's it's a different
Local.
Pika culture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so they're coming up from up high, so I kind of start like climbing up the slope, and I'm just hearing them kind of like looking all over every
Yeah.
time I hear one, and like they're keeping hidden, and so
Yeah.
finally I just sat down and waited, and I picked the spot because there's like this one particular rock, and I thought, if I could get a pike on that rock, like it would be, I could get exactly the shot that I was
Yeah.
after. So I just kind of sit down and wait. And it was like I would occasionally see one like just kind of come in and out real quickly, but it was a good half hour just waiting until finally like I had like, a pika kind of coming across my field of view and heading in the direction of that rock. So you can see it here. It's gathered. I think that's purple mountain heath.
Okay.
Which seemed to be like the main thing that they were feeding on there.
Nice.
And so it just starts making its way down down the slope, and I was actually fairly high up. So if you go, like you'll see it keeps going down.
Yep.
And then like like this is I couldn't have planned this better because that right there, that's the rock that I wanted the pike on. You can see like it's got this nice shape, and so I'd listen to your podcast, so I knew what to do next, which was just stay put, wait for the pika to go get some more food, and then while it's doing that, I would like scurry down, get in position, and then when it comes back, I get my shot.
Yeah.
Well, 20 minutes later, the pika's still on the rock.
Oh yeah, he was posted up, huh?
Yeah. Did not listen to the podcast. So I was like, okay, well, this pike is on the rock. It's right where I want it, and it seems kind of comfortable because it doesn't mind me being there.
Yeah.
So I figured, all right, I got to get myself into position.
Yep.
And so I start moving, and like I'm on like this, this talus rock. You got to like consider every step because otherwise, you could like make a bunch of noise or worse. So I'm like easing my way down in this kind of like 5 minutes between moves.
Okay.
Just like, working my way down, trying to get to where I've got, the pike like with some landscape behind it instead of just rocks.
I got a question for you.
And that was, yeah.
So you've got plenty of time here. It seems like most of this was in open shade, but you had no idea they were going to be in the shade like that when you went to the spot, right?
Actually, I did. So
you did. Okay.
Yeah, the lake kind of runs north south.
Gotcha.
And so when I got there, I had a choice. I could go on the west side or the east side, and since it was getting on towards sunset, I figured that if I went on the east side, they'd be like in harsh light and then really bad light.
Yeah.
So I figured it'd be better to go on the west side where they'd actually be in the shade.
Yep.
And I'd have like
nice.
Some lighting challenges, but something that I could probably work with in post.
Well,
that was totally intentional.
Gave you more time to shoot with them as well, right? Yeah, which is
exactly.
That's important, especially if it's like the first time you're messing with them. So very cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that you were thinking of that.
Yeah, and like and the sun, like the sun set on that side. It's a pretty steep valley, so it set on that side of the valley like fairly early, like something like an hour and a half before like true sunset.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so you can see like I'm working my way down, but it's like it's 5 minutes between moves, and everyone like you have to kind of like ease myself down into a position so I can wait for 5 minutes, not being big and looming.
Sure.
And then I get down to where finally I'm starting to get like, a little bit of landscape, but
Yeah,
like, it's like it's different from the rocks, but you still don't really have like the sense of where the pika is. And that was
sure.
really my goal, was I wanted to have like, this scene where you could kind of see the environment where the pikas live. Um, but I'm getting close, so I just got to make one more move, and then I'll be in the perfect position. And of course, I make that move, and that was when the pika finally spooked, and so it went into a rock hole, and then like 5 minutes later it came out, and this is like a nice shot, but
Yeah,
I want to see the whole pika,
yeah,
like with the distant background, and I got some rock behind it.
yeah. Because he's
um
showing so clean on this rock, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Hey, I know you had that goal going into mind of the scenic shot and everything. Were you also hoping to get some closer portraits as well? Was that like a nice secondary goal, or just not even really? You were really working towards the one goal and whatever else happened along the way?
I mean, like the thing that I had in my mind for the whole like trip was that scenic shot.
Gotcha.
Of course, I definitely wanted to get some behavior and stuff, but like I
Yep.
knew like there wouldn't be wildflowers, and that's kind of like the classic pika behavior
Yeah.
shot, is carrying the wildflowers. It was too late in the season for wildflowers, so I figured, yeah, I'd get some portraits, I'd get whatever, but
Okay.
you know, all of my planning and just kind of how I was approaching the shot was all geared towards the nice scene.
Nice. Nice. Excellent.
So at this point, right, we got the pika, and I'm in position. I've got the mounds behind the pika. Now I just need the pika to go back to that rock, and it seemed to be its favorite rock, because I spent like a half
Sure.
hour there while I was making my way down the slope. And so I waited a good hour, and the pika, like, it was a hot day, and so I think it had been kind of like taking it easy,
Yeah.
until the sun went down and it cooled down a little, and then it could like get a little bit more active. So it was starting to get pretty active, and it was actually coming in closer to me. And so I got some nice shots that are kind of getting a little bit more towards portrait,
Yep.
but still with the busy rocks in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
I think there's another one where it gets like even closer.
Nice.
Um, so it's like this is all nice, but I'd seen it on that rock. Like I was like, I
Sure.
got to get this pika on the rock.
That's almost the worst
I
when
think,
it's in the
yeah,
place you want and then they move. You're like, but I know there's potential, and
yeah.
so you get like so locked into that. Yeah, it's tough.
But yeah, but it was cool though. Like like I definitely wanted that, but it was just cool like watching the pika,
Sure.
bouncing around and like going and nibbling on its food stash, and then scurrying here, scurrying there.
Did the size
Um,
surprise you? Because it surprises me every time how tiny they are.
yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. I had an idea, but yeah, once you're actually there and it's just like it's on like this little rock,
Yeah.
uh, it's amazing just like how well they blend in. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely a little bit of editing here to help see the pica.
Sure.
Like if you're not looking for them, you're just never even going to notice them.
Totally. Yeah. Definitely. Nice.
Yeah, so we got pica pretty close in here. And at this point, like I think it hit it pretty much like I was just part of the landscape, and so it was just kind of like doing its thing.
Sure.
Um, and I think I spent about an hour just waiting for sunset and seeing if I could get pika on the rock.
Yeah.
But yeah, just it didn't happen that day. I think I got one more shot that was like kind of nice and scenic. Yeah, right there.
There we
But
go.
it's good, but like
Yeah.
I was like, I got to get it on that rock.
And,
The good
and at this
news
point,
was,
he's
go
too
ahead.
close here for the scene that you want, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like I think I was probably, yeah, I was zoomed out a little here too as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Like
400.
because
Yep.
I can't remember if we saw it earlier. Well, yeah, on that first shot, like you see that mountain peak.
Yes.
And so I wanted to get that peak in there. Um, so yeah, but like I was pretty happy with this
Of
shot. Like,
course.
this is my second day trying to photograph pikas, and I've got like, this nice shot of it with, a mountain in the background.
Yeah.
So I went home like pretty happy that day. I was like, all right, I got the shot, and I still had one more day left before I had to head home.
Nice.
Um, and at that point, like I knew exactly what I was doing the next day,
Yep.
right? Like I knew when the pika would be active. I knew the exact spot where I had the nice background. I made sure to like photograph the rocks I was sitting on
Yeah.
because all the rocks start kind of looking the same after a while.
Yeah.
So I had like photos so I could retrace my steps and just go
Nice.
right to the spot. And so the plan was just show up, sit with the right composition.
Yep.
And since the pika had gone to that rock first, one of the things that I learned from your podcast is that they're kind of habitual.
Yeah.
They'll often sort of like repeat the same loops. And so I figured if it went to that rock first when I was there that day, then the next day would probably do the same thing.
Nice.
So yeah, so this is the next day. I was kind of just sitting in my spot, and I'd rearrange some rocks so that I had like a nice seat that I could just
Nice.
sit on for.
Good. Yeah, it's not comfortable hanging out in there, is it?
No,
Not at
no,
all.
not at all. If I was thinking ahead, I probably would have brought a pillow with me.
Yeah.
But I made a rock pillow and it
Yeah.
camping pillow. So I made a rock pillow and that worked. So yeah, this was like after something like a half hour of waiting.
Okay.
I just kind of got out there, hearing the pika calling,
Yeah.
enjoying a nice autumn day. And then it's kind of like the same thing. Like the sun went behind the side of the valley.
Yep.
The pika comes out. And I'm like, all right, dude. And yeah, just went to the rock. And I think this is actually like one of the first compositions that I tried. I was kind of
Yeah.
like, I had the rock, had the mountain in the background, so get like the symmetry.
Yeah.
Just got the shot. And then I tried a bunch of other things. Then at the end of the day, it was like, this was actually the one that worked the best for me.
Nice, man. I absolutely love he's on his own little triangle mountain, and then we got the other one in the background. Like that, yeah, that symmetry is wonderful there. I thought the lighting is great. I actually really enjoy that sort of shadowed foreground, brighter background. I think sometimes, like in ways like this, it can really, if the background was in shade or if the foreground had sun, I think it would almost not let your eye go to the background enough. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But because the background is like more lit and kind of contrastier, vibrant than the foreground, it really balances nicely visually to me. But the subject being so, in focus and close, even though he's in the shade, the softer, less contrasty light, my eye goes there first, of course. You know what I mean? But it really does just like, it works really nicely together. So very well done, dude.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you had to be pumped when you went up there.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it was like, kind of like this is day 3, right? And to just have like everything just like work out finally, like exactly how I'd expected it. Yeah, I was pretty excited.
Yeah, man. And so like, I can imagine like anytime something like this happens when it's there and you have a zoom lens on, I see that, yeah, you ended up at 200 millimeter here. I mean, you probably have so many compositions of this moment, right? Like, how long did he stay up there for you?
I was a while. I've kind of lost track. I think like on the rock, like something like 20,
oh, wow.
20, 30 minutes. Yeah. So I got this shot, and then, after it kind of like, I figured it kind of gotten comfortable with me. Like I started moving around and trying some different things. But yeah, it turned out like, while I was waiting, I kind of, tried some different compositions.
Sure.
And figured a few things out. So I already had this one pretty much framed up.
Yeah.
So that, if I just had like a minute or so, I knew that I was going to get this shot. And then, like having the pika there. So, sometimes you get like, once you actually have the subject there, all of a sudden you get like, this inspiration that you didn't have when you're just trying to like imagine, okay,
sure,
well, there's a pika over here.
Yeah.
But yeah, in this case, just it worked out from the first time. And that's kind of unusual for me. Like I'm not like, pre-visualizing like the exact composition, like with the animal in the background and everything. It's kind of like, okay, we got the animal, let's figure something out.
Sure.
So it was actually kind of a neat experience, like being like, there should be a pika right there. And then, pika read the script.
Yeah, that's so awesome, dude. Yeah, and it really is. It's almost My recent Pika experience that you were listening to on that podcast was much more spontaneous and short-lived. Like all in, I was there for an hour, and then I walked with the shots that I got. In a way, like, I'm not complaining about that experience, but in a way, it's almost more rewarding when you had to try one location, that didn't work out, switch plans, go to another location, spend some time with it, learn about them, come back the next day, and then it kind of pans out and gives you this result. Like you had a little bit more build up to that payoff there, which is a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so here's straight out of camera. So talk to me about it. Why did you expose that way? And then what was the intention with the edit here?
Yeah, I mean, I was, the exposure was basically like, preserve the highlights.
Yeah.
I knew going in that I was going to have to really raise the shadows to make this work. Like, when I chose the west side of the lake, like I knew that I was going to have like pretty deep shadows. So we just kind of, expose, try to preserve the highlights, and there's like just a little bit of snow left on the mountain, so just make sure that doesn't blow out.
Sure.
And then I mean, the edit was basically, it was, like bring up the shadows. And of course, once you bring up the shadows, like it's super, like kind of, what's the opposite of contrasty? Super muted.
Yeah.
So, I had to do a fair amount of work to, kind of bring some contrast back into the Pika.
Yep.
And then because like the lighting was really interesting, because, you have basically like full sun on the background. And you might notice like the mountain's lit from the west, but the Pika is actually like lit from the east. Like, you got the sun going bouncing right to left on the mountain, but yeah, exactly, it was bouncing off of the valley on the other side.
Yeah.
And so it had like this like real magenta cast to it.
Yep.
So that was like a little bit of a struggle of like having to do the like the color correction for basically for the white balance for the background, like the subject, and then the trees were also weird. So there's a lot of futzing around with white balance. And then, just like shaping the light on the Pika a little, just bringing out that direction. But it was, once I actually had the shot, like it felt like a pretty straightforward edit. It was just, make it so you could actually see the Pika. I thought about like, well, leaving it as a silhouette, but
I was wondering.
Yeah, I thought about that, but like, it looks kind of like a little bit, I mean, it basically is a silhouette out of camera. And it just kind of looks like a lump on a rock to me.
Yeah, they do.
Like I think if I'd had like the rim light, I think that would have been a really cool silhouette. But I was in shade, so I wasn't going to get the rim light.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other thing was you can kind of see at like the bottom of the rod, like there was some foreground rock in front of the rock it's sitting on, and it wasn't really adding much. Like it was kind of like a little blurry and weird. Yep. It's something that I've been working on, is trying to not just go to like, my default crop. Like I usually just kind of start with 3x4, but I've been trying to really just slow down and think, okay, what aspect ratio does this photo want? And, because it was a Vista, and then because like the stuff at the bottom of the frame, it wasn't really adding anything. And if anything, it was just kind of weird and, sort of messing up the shots. I went, like fairly wide. I think this is something like 2:1, 16:9, like something like that.
Do you end up picking specific aspect ratios, or you just unlock it, go freeform, and just dial in, see where it fits when you're doing something like that?
It's kind of a bit of both. Like for whatever reason, I usually like ending up on some like, I don't know why.
Isn't that
but
odd?
I like it to be a round number. So I'll usually kind of like figure out what works and then say, okay, that looks like about like, 2:1 or whatever. And then just, get it to be a nice ratio.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And then I'm assuming, like your ISO was pretty low there, so you were trying to keep that down just to have that dynamic range, because that's the thing, right? Like if that ISO gets up too high, it's going to be really hard to bring this back to where you want it and still have the good quality. But man, great job all around. Yeah. I would have done the exact same thing. I would have shot the same way, man. And it's an incredible image. And congrats to you, really, for like
Thanks.
Formulating the plan, putting it into action, getting out there, hitting a kind of a roadblock for sure with that first outing, you know what I mean? And then sticking with it and making it pay off. Like that's a big achievement right there, because that kind of thing can, like, at least for myself, it's so easy to just be like, it's not working out, and then maybe either bail on the whole thing or just switch to something easier or more obvious or more consistent. And so yeah, it's nice when you can make it work and it pays off in the end, man.
I mean, I definitely did switch to something easier.
Yeah, but I mean, like, completely changing subjects,
species.
you know? Yeah, but you stayed the same, so that's really good. Yeah, you just found an easier way to do it, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any plans on going back and next season, trying to hit different seasons now? You kind of have a little bit of the lay of the land, and I assume that wildflower thing is on the list now, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it always goes, right? You get the shot, you're happy for about, like, a day, and then it's like, okay. Now what's next?
Yeah.
I definitely want to get the wildflowers, and that's like a really classic shot. Something else I want to try to do, and it's tough to time it because the roads are actually closed for the winters.
Sure.
I want to get a pike on snow.
Okay.
Or if not on snow, like, with snow covering the mound behind it.
Yeah.
But you got to time that really carefully because, once the roads open, the snow's melting away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and depending on the season, I think sometimes, like, by the time they get the roads clear, you might not have snow where the pikas are.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something on my list, because I haven't. That was actually one of the things about this shot was I hadn't seen many scenic pika shots. Like, I did a little bit of research before I headed out, and I think I found two shots that had kind of like that were scenic.
Yeah.
There's one that you'd taken with like an iPhone like 5 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And then Deirdre had this amazing scenic shot of a pika where she has like every shot imaginable of a pika.
Yeah.
So this was something kind of different. So pika and snow, I haven't seen many of those.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
Yeah, Deer just got one. So that's the next goal. And then if that doesn't work, well then maybe just pike it with wildflowers.
Yeah. But keeping with the scenic, any ideas or plans to try and get more wide, get it in a little bit closer, any of that kind of stuff as well in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this composition, but
Yeah.
every direction you face, there's different scenery, and so there's if I can get one basically turned around facing the other way, there's like kind of like these sawtooth mountain peaks
Nice.
behind there, so that would be cool. And yeah, I mean, like, I think the thing I've realized is that if you just like stay still, like, they end up kind of ignoring you.
Yeah.
And so it does give you that opportunity to kind of like get in a little closer and do a little wider angle, which I haven't done a lot of, but they definitely be a neat subject to do that with.
Awesome, man. Well, Jacques, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this story. It's an awesome story. Like I said, again, I'm glad you stuck it out. And I look forward to seeing what you continue to come up with this species, because I always really appreciate the thought you put into all of your photography, both in the planning and thinking about it through, but also in the aspect of shooting and post-processing. But this is a great example of it, man. So thanks again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.